What is Angular 2? Angular 2 is an open-source framework platform designed to easily build high-performance, large-scale web applications, all while making them low-maintenance. 2. What's the difference between Angularjs and Angular 2? Angular 2 is a complete rewrite of Angularjs. Angular 2 is geared more towards developing mobile applications. 3. What are the main advantages of Angular 2? Angular 2's main advantages are: mobile-friendly. Angular 2 was created with the mobile app industry in mind. Browser compatibility. Angular 2 supports Internet Explorer 9, 10, 11, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, Android 4.1, as well as Microsoft Edge. Cross-platform flexibility. When using Angular 2, developers can design applications that can run on desktop systems, Android-based devices, iOS-based devices, etc. High performance. Angular 2 uses a highly optimized superset of JavaScript that makes both the app and website load faster. Additionally, Angular 2's new component router results in faster loads. Code generation. Templates are turned into code that's highly optimized for today's JavaScript virtual machines. This gives the developer all of the benefits of handwritten code, but with the framework's productivity. Cost-effective, and of course, Angular is open source, so the price is right. 4. Every tool has its downside. What are Angular 2's disadvantages? The drawbacks of Angular 2 are: confusing. Since there are numerous ways of doing a task, it can be difficult, especially for newcomers, to choose the right way to perform a task. Steep learning curve. On a related note, if you don't know TypeScript, you better learn it, since it's been introduced into Angular 2. Basic functions are easy, but when you move into advanced concepts, the curve gets steep. It's a whole different animal. If you like and are used to Angular, you are in for a shock, as Angular 2 represents a total redesign. Slow user interface. If you are dealing with more than 2000 watchers, get ready for some major lag. Inconsistent documentation. Due to a fragmented community, there's a lack of clear, well-written, consistent documentation. 5. List the features of the Angular 2 framework. The features are: components, used to build applications into mixed modules. Services, code sets that are shared between different codes within an application. TypeScript, a JavaScript superset that's maintained by Microsoft. 6. What are the chief components of Angular 2? The main components are: component brings the modules together. Metadata adds more data to the Angularjs class. Modules breaks up the application into logical pieces of code, each module performing a single task. Service creates a component that can be shared across the whole application. Templates defines an Angularjs application's views. 7. Name the 3 module arrays. Modules break your applications into logical boundaries. They are, in alphabetical order. Bootstrap array tells Angular which components to load so the functionality can be accessed. Export array sends out components, directives, and pipes to be used in other modules. Import array brings in functionality from other Angular modules. 8. What's an event emitter? It's a class in the Angular framework that emits custom events. 9. What's an Angular 2 directive? Directives are custom HTML elements used to extend the HTML's power. 10. Explain routing. Routing aids in directing users to different pages depending on what option they chose on the main page. Therefore, the required Angular component that gets rendered to the user is determined by whatever option they chose. 11. What does CLI stand for, and what does it do? It stands for Command Line Interface and is used to create an Angular application. Additionally, it helps to create an application's unit and end-to-end test. 12. Describe lazy loading. This is a technique where, instead of an entire web page being loaded and given to the user in one shot, only the wanted section gets loaded in, with the rest of content delayed until needed, if at all. 13. Discuss the xconfig.json file. The file is used to provide the options for TypeScript that will be used for an Angular project. 14. Discuss the differences between activated route and router state, in the context of Angular 2. Activated route. Router state. An activated route is made up of the data about a route associated with a component that is loaded in an outlet. Activated route snapshot is needed in order to traverse all the activated routes. Activated route snapshot contains all data. When a route gets altered, activate route snapshot keeps data from the original route. The router state represents the writer's actual state. The router creates a router state snapshot during navigation once all of the redirects have been applied. The router state, on the other hand, focuses on application components arrangements. The differences are as follows. 15. What's a pipe? Pipes edit, transform and format the data within the template. Bottom line, pipes takes input data and transforms it into output into something that we want. 16. What's a directive? Directives add behavior to existing DOM elements. They design reusable components. 17. What is the Aot compilation, and what are its pros and cons? Aot is an acronym for ahead of time. Rather than being compiled in the browser at runtime, components and templates are compiled at build time. They are converted to native JavaScript and HTML. On the plus side, Aot offers faster download and rendering times. Furthermore, build time errors are more easily detected. On the minus side, Aot creates large JavaScript bundles once compilation is done, which runs counter to what Aot is there for in the first place. Furthermore, Aot only works with HTML and CSS. Lastly, it requires a cleanup step. 18. How do you handle Angular application errors? All Angular applications have an error handling option. Just include the React.js catch library, then use the catch function. The catch function, in turn, contains a link that sends you to the error handler function. When in the error handler function, you send the error in question to the console, while also sending the error back to the main program in order to assure continued operation of the main program. Once this is all in place, whenever an error arises in the future, it'll be redirected to the browser's error console. 19. Define the role of a decorator in Angular 2. Decorators identify an object type or class that has been created by the TypeScript as an Angular component. The decorators provide additional metadata that dictates how the component should be processed and used when it's run. 20. Can you convert a string into a date? Leave. The date of this tutorial is new date vertical bar date, MMDDYY. Leave. This is what the syntax looks like. How would you explain Angular 2? Answer. Angular 2 is the promoted and progressed version of Angularjs, which is a JavaScript framework, and it was industrialized by Google. It is used for the construction of mobile applications and single-page web. Number of components in Angular 2 are scopes, directives, and controllers, templates, metadata, class, etc. Explain the term directives. Answer. They represent prolonged HTML attributes. They are the most significant features of Angular apps. Top 3 directives used are components, attribute, and structural. Explain the use of xconfig.json. Answer. It is used to guess the files at root level and the options of compiler essential for compiling a TypeScript project. Explain routing. Answer. The router allows viewers to circumnavigate from one page to the next. Routing supports users on the basis of the option selected on the main web page. Are there any security threats in Angular 2 you should be aware of? Answer. Threats emerge when you do something not legit. For example, injecting dynamic content of HTML, etc. To avoid these, you should cleanse external HTML. In the application, avoid using external URLs. Aot compilation should be used. Restrict API and prevent XSRF attacks. If the path is non-existent, how would you redirect to 404? Answer. You can always configure a URL that redirects to the succeeding URL. This is also handled to address problems like 404 not found. To go through history pages, location services can be used. What is the provision to handle Angular 2 errors? Answer. Every Angular 2 app can handle errors as they have the choice to find error. Using catch library React.js as well as catch function, it can be easily done. Explain tracer compiler. Answer. It takes classes and other features like generators from ECMAScript edition 6. It compiles them into JavaScript ES5 and it runs on browser. Developers use the code of advanced version with many features encouraging design forms. Explain dependency injection. Answer. Angular allows declared dependencies assigned to a class while instantiation. For injection of a service, injectable service should be registered after creation of it. Explain lazy loading. Answer. Using lazy loading, components of JS are overloaded asynchronously when activation occurs on a precise path. Explain pipes. Pipes is a feature used in Angular 2 and onward versions. It is used to design custom pipes. A pipe is used to input data and convert it into the desired output. Why is lazy loading used in Angular 2? Answer. This technique allows developers loading of different codes on demand. Let us suppose you were working with a retail application and it has diverse departments such as garments, electronics, and so on. Application starts running slow when all the sections are loaded all at once. With lazy loading, only the parts required by user are loaded and hence application load faster than before. Explain the benefits of unit testing. Answer: use of unit testing comes when you want to comprehend the fundamental concepts related to test cases of Angular 2. When you are trying to upgrade them to Angular projects, it can be easily found which test has failed. Following are the benefits of unit testing. It exposes the design errors. It helps in analyzing the code behavior. It acts as a guard against breaking changes. It also allows the refactoring. This test helps the developers in their work. What is the process of Singleton service? Answer: after importing injectable member from Angular core, HTTP module is imported along with HTTP as well as response members. Once that is done at Injectable, Decorator is added. What is component creation process? Answer: top-level component is imported using Angular core. Is used for component description. Instances are created of Directive, router config and Injectable, etc. Metadata is added: selector, styles, providers, template. Component is exported. Component is bootstrapped. What are event emitters? Answer: a change propagates to its children from the component itself. To reflect the same change to the parent, something changed. Emit, v1, where v1 is valued, can also be used for emitting any event. This is done in the setter while value change happens in the class. How is component is different from directive? Answer: they both have different annotations. For components, @component is used, and for the directive, @directive is used. The component is used for UI widgets. The directive is used for designing reusable components. One component is applicable for one DOM element, whereas many directives are applicable for one DOM elements. The view is used as @view in a component, while directive makes no use of view. Explain typings. Answer: it is used to handle definitions of TypeScript. To manage the typing type, definition manager is used. It permits the TypeScript compiler for easy use in class as well as properties. Installation of typing becomes easy with typing commands. What is the declaration of a global variable? Answer: the most common way is putting variables in the file, then export them. Import statement is used to use global variables. Is Angular 2 better than Angularjs? Answer: it is better than Angularjs because of the following reasons. Easy to learn. Dependency injection is very simple. A platform as well as language. Better quality, speed with performance. Cross-platform and modular. Supple routing and lazy loading. Assistances of ES6 as well as TypeScript. Can data be passed into components? Answer: there is a property binding trait for this. For binding data and components, creation of property bind is required. Using Decorator @input, you can create input binding. How are observables different from promises? Answer: observable, promise. RxJS library. Built-in app. Multiple values can be shown. Async task resolved again cannot be used over. If you don't need them, you can unsubscribe. Can't do that. Lazy. No such thing. Various operators like filter, map, pipe. Additional operators are not given. Explain hooks. Answer. These are functions called on specific phases of a component's life. They are required if app is built on the component architecture. For example, $init. These are some properties predefined in Angular and they are exposed on module controllers. How can you create services? Answer. First thing, Injectable member is imported. Decorator used is at Injectable. Service class will be exported. Explain custom pipes. Custom pipes are pipes created by the user. You can decide the transform function working with custom pipe, pass parameters to it, return value from it. What is styles? Styles. Answer. Styles are used to affect the template element style. The built-in features in the Decorator help developers to condense styles as part of components. Style and styles represent arrays. Many definitions can be applied for every position. Explain CLI. CLI or command line interface is used for building Angular apps. It is helpful to construct and initiate a project rapidly. How is at Injectable different from at Inject? Answer. At Injectable. At Inject. Dependencies metadata is set for constructor injection. Reports Angular about parameters to be injected. Dependency injection is not possible without it. Only used for injection of primitives. Explain Aot compilation. Answer. Aot or ahead of time. Aot is a compiler is used to convert HTML or TypeScript program lines into JavaScript during the phase of building prior to the browser downloading and running code. Other benefits of Aot are quick rendering, slighter asynchronous requests, reduced download size, detects errors effortlessly, better security and protection. Explain Aot advantages as well as limitations. Answer. Advantages. Quick download. Faster rendering. Decreases HTTP requests. Finds errors in the building level. Disadvantages. Cannot work along with file when it is not HTML or CSS. Must uphold bootstrap file Aot form. Must clean up prior to the compilation process. How will request animation frame undefined error is solved? Answer. This is a worldwide server running problem. The best answer for this is to look for request animation frame, then ensure that it's only being called when the client is in a browser and not the server. What is the process for writing console.log statements into a file? Answer. You can use logging flags from the command line. You can make sure with console.log that data is locked internally with console.log. Log file here is called chrome_debug.log. It is located in the directory. Can you check for installed CLI? Answer. First, you should make sure that at least node installation is done. Then CLI installation can be checked. Use cmd and open prompt. Type node v. Type npm v. It will ensure the node is installed. Type ngv now. Explain directive router link. Answer. This one is used to navigate from any view. It works directly as the user is doing application tasks. This link can right away be available from the browser. Navigation is done based on user action. This directive provides control to the elements of the anchor tag. Can you improve Angular 2's performance? Answer: you can do that using onPush, track by, lazy loading, avoiding value computation in the template. Change detection should be disabled. How is constructor different from Undefined? Answer: a default method of a class is constructor, and it is automatically called at the creation of a new object. Undefined represents a hook of the life cycle in Angular, and it indicates the component completion. Also for inject, dependencies constructor is used. Undefined is useful when initialization logic is to be performed. Explain hidden property. Answer: this is a specific case binding trait to hide property. You can compare it to onShow and also to ngHide. Nonetheless, it is more powerful. Explain at input, at output. Answer: these are decorators. At input is useful in the binding of property inside one component child to obtain parent value. At output is used for property binding in component to direct data of component child to parent. From backend, how will you show error message in Angular 2? Answer: for this, the error message is set equal to a variable. These are Angular variables. Then you can check if this variable is existing and confirm if you wish to show it. Explain priming too. Answer: it is a UI component used in Angular. It's very simple and lightweight, but also very powerful, as well as improved for a receptive touch of cross-browser. Can you improve the application to have better performance? Answer: we can do that using the following steps. Using Aot compilation. Using lazy loading and not completely bundled app. Sidestep non-essential import statements. Eliminate unused plus redundant libraries from third party. Application dependencies should be removed when not required. Angular 2 is object-oriented or not? Answer: yes, it is a proper object-oriented framework. Explain tree shaking. Answer: to eliminate dead code, this concept is used in projects. If some code is not referenced but still written in the project, you can drop it here. It is helpful in eliminating unused modules while the building process. It also makes applications lightweight. Can you change input written in lowercase as well as uppercase? Answer: yes. The filter can be used to do that. Lowercase and uppercase letters can be converted. Explain custom typings so that editor warnings can be avoided. Answer: for that, you need to spread the type definition of an external library. Without making any changes to node_modules, you need to create a folder with name, custom_typings. This is the place where you can keep customized type definitions. Explain Injectable. Answer: a very significant application. Injectable is an indispensable component providing modularity. They are associated through injector type. Explain Shadow DOM. Answer: Shadow DOM is an important portion of web components, and it enables style encapsulation. It also helps to hide DOM logic. Along with it, you can use scoped styles lacking showcasing to the outer world. When was Angular 2 released? 2016. Explain external CSS style loading. Answer: For that, you can change view encapsulation and it presents styles denoting bleed into. How is template URL different from a template? Answer. Template URL is used to define external templates in HTML. Template is used to specify inline templates with template. What is Angular 2? Angular 2 is a completely revived component-based JavaScript framework in which an application is a tree of loosely coupled components. It is a more advanced version of Angularjs. It is more of an all-in-one framework, so it also helps in creating a single website without getting trapped into different JS frameworks. An Angular 2 is a modular framework in which our code is divided into individual procedures that offer a similar kind of functionality, hence improving the testing, upgradation and maintenance of the application. It has a lot of useful features such as server-side rendering, cross-platform, and supports more languages than any other framework. It is a new TypeScript framework built around the concept of components, which is paving the way for a better and spacious development. We can even make hybrid applications using Angular 2, which gives us a sharp edge by providing us the flexibility to use the same standard codes for developing other applications. What are the new features of Angular 2? Angular 2 is a platform that encompasses a wide range of capabilities. Some new features were added in Angular 2, which includes Universal Server Rendering. It is the library which is used to make building universal apps a smooth experience. It is an important feature of Angular 2. A mobile toolkit. It provides all the mobile toolkit and techniques to build high-performance mobile applications. The web applications which are developed using the mobile toolkit can be loaded on any device with or without internet connection, which is a great advantage. A command line interface. It can generate components, routes, services, and pipes with the help of commands. Data binding. Data binding has been improved in Angular 2. So, whatever DOM element property you need to bind, you just wrap it in square brackets. E.g. ing src is equal to product.image. Modular. Various modules have been removed from Angular's core, which has resulted in better performance. Modern Angular 2 has been targeted as modern browsers, in which various hacks that make Angular harder to develop have been removed. How to declare a component in Angular 2? Components in Angular 2 are simply directives that are always associated with a direct template. Angular 2 components have an extremely well-defined lifecycle. When working with Angular components, we can make use of interfaces, which allows us to implement functionality for different times in a component's lifecycle. A component must belong to an ng module in order for it to be usable by another component or application. Components can even control their runtime behavior by implementing various lifecycle hooks. Declaration of component. At component, selector, greet, template, hello, name. Class greet. Name, string is equal to, world. Components always have a template, and only one component can be instantiated per an element in a template. When a component is instantiated, Angular creates a change detector, which is responsible for propagating the component's building. When to use ng and constructor in Angular 2. Constructors are used for initializing class members and also for dependency injection. ng is used for the initialization work. Both of these methods are called when the component is created. It is really important that we should know when to and how to use them. These are used for providing the best structure for your component's code. A constructor method is a predefined method in the constructor class which is only called when the class is instantiated. It is also used for properly initializing the fields. The constructor in Angular 2 is used to create a new instance of the class. ngOnInit is the class we import when we implement the constructor in order to use it in a class. The method used in this case is ngOnInit. This method helps in initializing the directive or the component after the data-bound properties are displayed and the directive or component's input is set. Explain the concept of lazy loading in Angular 2. Lazy loading is a module which is used to decrease the startup time. When lazy is used, then our system application does not need to load everything at once. It only needs to load what the user expects to see when the application first loads. The modules which are lazily loaded will only be loaded when the user navigates to their routes. Lazy loading improves the performance of our system applications. It keeps the initial payload small, and these smaller payloads lead to faster download speeds. It helps in lowering the resource cost, especially on mobile networks. If a user doesn't visit a section of the application, they won't ever download those resources. The concept of lazy loading in Angular requires us to format the application in a certain way. All the assets that are to be lazy loaded should be added to its own module. Lazy loading is set up in the main routing file. Lazy loading overcomes the problem of slow loading of applications in their own way, which hence improves the loading time of the application. Lazy loading can be done only in 4 steps. Update your route file. Install Angular Router Loader and add the loader to your Webpack configuration file. Define the lazy routes. Import the routes to the module. List the key components of Angular 2. The Angular 2 comprises of the following key components. Module. This is used to break the application into the logical pieces of the program code, and each piece of code or module is designed to perform a single and unique task. Component. This is used to bring the modules together. Templates. This is used to define the views of an Angularjs application. Metadata. This is used to add more data to an Angularjs application. Service. This component is used to develop the components, which can be used to share in the entire application. What is the use of for-track by directive in Angular? For iterating over a collection in Angular 2, the ng-for directive is used, which instantiates a template once per item from the collection. If a data needs to be changed at some point in the collection, then a problem occurs because Angular cannot keep a track of items in the collection and has no knowledge of the items which were added or deleted. This results in the deletion of all the DOM elements that are associated with the data and are again created. If the collection is big, then it becomes more complicated because a lot of DOM manipulation occurs, which are expensive. So, to solve this problem, a track by function is used, which takes the index and the current item as arguments and returns the unique identifier for this item. What is a template in Angular 2? The template in Angular 2 is used to define the views of the Angularjs application. Explain component-specific hooks in Angular. Below are few component-specific hooks in Angular 2. After content init, it initializes the component content. After content checked, it checks the binding of the external content. After view init, it creates the component view. And after view checked, it checks the bindings of the components view. List the modern browsers supported by Angular 2. Angular supports most of the recent browsers, some of which are Google Chrome, Firefox, Edge, IE for versions 9 to 11, Safari, iOS 7.1, Android 4.1, IE Mobile. What is Angular at route params? The route params are used to map the given URLs based on the route URLs, and they become optional parameters for that route. Explain Angular 2 hidden property. The hidden property in Angular 2 is a special case. The property is more powerful and is used to bind any property of the elements. It is considered the closest cousin of show and ngd. It sets the display property, display, none. Why are decorators used in Angular 2? In Angular 2, decorators are used as an identifier of class or type of the object that is created by the TypeScript. The Angular 2 identifies the class below decorator call as the definition of the class and extends the decorator's specific properties with the class definition. List some advantages of Angular 2 over Angular 1. Angular 2 is a rewritten version of Angular 1 and not an update. The best way to compare Angular 2 and Angular 1 is by finding out the new features in Angular 2. This way we will be able to find out the advantages of Angular 2 over Angular 1 precisely. So, some of the advantages of Angular 2 are Angular 2, Angular 1. Angular 2 is a mobile-oriented framework, whereas Angular 1 was not developed with mobile base in mind. Angular 2 is a versatile framework, i.e. we have more choices for languages. We can use ES5, ES6, TypeScript or Dart to write an Angular 2 code, whereas an Angular 1 code can written by using only ES5, ES6 and Dart. We don't have many choices of language in Angular 1. Nowadays, the controllers are replaced by components and Angular 2 is completely component-based, whereas Angular 1 was based on controllers whose scope is now over. Angular 2 directly uses the valid HTML DOM element properties and events, which reduces the usage of many available built-in directives. How do you define transition between two states in Angular? Transitions between two states take place so that we can build simple animations between two states driven by a model attribute. Transition basically means navigating from the current state to a new state. In Angular, the transition is an animation-specific function which is used in Angular's animation DSL language. Transition declares the sequence of animation steps that will be executed when the entered value is satisfied. A function is provided an argument for a transition and it will be executed each time a state change occurs. In this, if the function is true, then the animation will run, else it won't get executed. These animation transitions are placed within the animation triggers. The transition depends upon what the animation was in the previous state and what it will become in the next state. In other words, if a transition is defined that matches the old current state criteria, then the associated animation will be triggered. Syntax: function transition, string exp, string steps, animation metadata vertical bar. Animation metadata, animation transition metadata. What is the difference between observable and promises? The differences between observable and promises are: observable is a more powerful way of handling HTTP asynchronous requests, whereas a promise handles a single event when an asynchronous operation completes or fails. An observable is like a stream which allows passing 0 or more events where the callback is called for each event, whereas a promise eventually calls the success or failed callback even when you don't need the notification or the result it provides anymore. Observable works with multiple values for a particular time, whereas promises works with and even returns a single value at a time. Observables can be cancelled, whereas promises cannot be cancelled. Observable supports map, filter, reduce and similar operators, whereas promises have more readable codes with try catch and async await. In observable, one operator, retry, can be used to retry whenever needed, whereas promises cannot be retried. A promise should have access to the original function that returned the promise in order to have a retry capability. List the differences between Angular 2 components versus directives. Apart from components, directives are also used in Angular 2, which allows us to attach behavior to elements in them. There are certain differences between the components and directives in Angular 2. They are: in Angular 2, a component is a directive with a view, whereas a directive is a decorator with no view. Components are the specific type of directive that allows us to utilize web component functionality throughout our application, whereas directive is the mechanism by which we attach behavior to elements. A component is used to break up the application into smaller components, whereas directive is used to design the reusable components. Components can be used to define pipes, whereas we cannot define pipes using directives. Components can be present per DOM element, whereas directive is used to add behavior to an existing DOM element. What is Ecma script? Ecma script is a standard for scripting languages. It is a subset of JavaScript. Languages such as ActionScript, JavaScript use Ecma script as its core. Ecma stands for European Computer Manufacturers Association. Coders commonly use Ecma script for client-side scripting on the World Wide Web. It is also used for server applications and services. It includes structured, dynamic, functional, and prototype-based features. The Ecma script was developed by Brendan Ash of Netscape. The Ecma script is standardized by the Ecma International Standards Organization in the Ecma 262 and Ecma 402 specifications. It is a programming language which is designed specifically for acting on an existing entity or system. It provides the rules, details, and guidelines that a scripting language must observe to be considered Ecma script compliant. What is Tracer compiler? Tracer is a compiler which takes Ecma script and compiles it down to regular JavaScript that runs in your browser. Tracer can be used in several ways, like typing or pasting the ES6 code into the readable print loop page, or by including Tracer in the web page and compiling ES6 code content on the fly, or many other ways. Even Tracer is written in ES6, compiled to ES5. The main goal of a Tracer compiler is to inform the designs of JavaScript features and allows us to write the code in a better manner. Nowadays, Tracer compilers are broadly used in Angular 2 platform. It also supports transpiling and type checking via type and notations. How to cache an observable data in Angular 2. Caching of an observable data is done with the help of observable.cache. We can use caching in order to cache the response in the memory and then, on the next subscription, instead of requesting the remote server again. This operator is used at the end of the string. Caching is important for the performance, especially on bandwidth-restricted devices and slow networks. You should have a good understanding of caching while working with promises, but while translating it to observable, it is a bit difficult. Therefore, when interacting with observables, we typically set up a subscription on the consumer side and react to values coming through the pipe. We can easily add caching to the observables by adding publish replay, 1, and ref count. List out the differences between activated route and router state, with reference to Angular 2. Here are some of the differences between activated route and router state with reference to Angular 2. Activated route consists of the information about a route associated with a component loaded in an outlet, whereas router state represents the state in which the writer actually is. We need activated route snapshot to traverse all the activated routes, whereas during a navigation, after redirects have been applied, the router creates a router state snapshot. Activated route snapshot has all data. When route changes, activate route snapshot has data from previous route, whereas the router state cares about application components, or, to be more specific, about their arrangements. What would you have in a shared module in Angular 2? Shared module is used to import the services in both eager and lazy loaded module. We all know that lazy loaded modules create their own branch on the dependency injection tree. Shared module consists of the services that are registered by the Angular in the root app injector. For this, we need not import it in the lazy module because lazy loaded modules already have access to the services defined at the root. Components, pipes and directives are also defined in the shared module. Other modules that import the shared module can use it in their templates. This means that the modules can be imported normally in the lazy loaded module. The shared module contains the code that will be used across the applications and featured modules. It also consists of the common template components. DOM components should also be present in the shared module. It typically consists of some common Angular modules too. When you are importing the shared module, you will also need to import the module with its providers, because there is no app module in the test. What do you mean by a structural directive in Angular 2? Structural directives are used to manipulate DOM in Angular. Structural directives are responsible for HTML layout. By adding, removing, or manipulating elements in Angular, they shape or reshape the structure of DOM. This structural directive is applied to a host element with the help of other directives. The directives then do whatever it is supposed to do with that host element and its descendants. Structural directives can be easily recognized. It can also delay the instantiation of a component or an element. It can also be used for cosmetic effect or manually handling the timing of the loading of components. Structural directives are bound to a template. The two most common structural directives are ngIf and ngFor. The process occurring in a structural directive is dynamic. What do you understand by a template variable? How is it used? A template in Angular 2 is used to instantiate embedded views. A template variable can be accessed in two ways. Either by placing a directive on an element and have the template variable for this embedded view injected into the constructor of the directive using the template variable token, or you can query for the template variable from a component or a directive via the query. A template variable in Angular 2 is a reference to a DOM element or directive within a template. Template variables are used to access the values of DOM element properties. It is declared with the help of hash and ref as a prefix. For example, hash myvar and ref myvar. Template variable names cannot be made duplicate, as in this way it might give unpredictable values. The scope of a reference variable is the entire template. It can be used anywhere inside a template. In Angular 2, a component needs to have a view, and to define a view, a template variable is used. It allows us to express data and property binding, event binding and template concerns. What is the difference between constructor and Untitled in Angularjs? The comprehensive comparison that taps into components' initialization process is given below. Untitled is just a method in a class which structurally is not different to any other method in a class. Whereas, a constructor is a completely different thing. It will be called when an instance of a class is created. A class constructor in Angular is used to inject dependencies, which is called constructor injection pattern. Whereas, when Untitled is called, it has finished creating a component DOM, injected all required dependencies through constructor and processed input bindings. A constructor is a default method of the class that is executed when the class is instantiated. Whereas, Untitled is a life cycle hook called by Angular 2 to indicate that Angular is done creating the component. Untitled relies on the binding of the component. Whereas, it is not the case when a constructor is used. What is the meaning of component lifecycle in Angular 2? The component lifecycle hooks overview the lifecycle sequence and the interfaces. Angular manages the lifecycle of a component. Angular creates it, renders it. It can also create and render its children. It also checks when its data-bound properties change. It can even destroy it before removing it from the DOM. The lifecycle hook offered by Angular provides the visibility into these key life moments and the ability to act when they occur. The components go through an entire set of processes or life cycle right from its initiation to the end of the application. There are a number of lifecycle hooks which are listed below. On changes. Untitled. Docx. After content unique. After content checked. After view unique. After view checked. On distro. How will you convert a string into a percentage? To convert a string into a percentage format, a percent filter is used. What is CLI? CLI is the acronym of Command Line Interface, which can be used to create the Angularjs application. Using CLI, you can also create a unit and end-to-end tests for the Angular application. What is Aot compilation? Aot stands for ahead of time. It is the compilation in which Angular compiles the components and templates to JavaScript and HTML while developing. What are event emitters? An event emitter is a class defined in core module that can be used by components and directives to emit custom events. Explain host decorator in Angular 2. The host decorators in Angular 2 bind the properties of components with UI element values. The properties inside a component class definition which are decorated with @host binding are accessed in a template from the assigned property that is @host binding. Title is equal to our title, whatever the title is. What are pipes in Angular 2? The pipes are used to transform the input data into the desired output. There are some built-in pipes provided by the Angular such as date pipe, uppercase pipe, lowercase pipe, currency pipe, and % pipe. You can also create your own pipe in Angular using the following syntax. The syntax for creating custom pipes. Import component from @Angular core @component selector @happy birthday template p yours birthday is birthday vertical bar date p export class happy birthday component birthday is equal to new date 1988 3/15 15th April 1988. How can you handle errors in Angular 2 applications? The Angular 2 applications provide with the option of error handling. The errors in Angular 2 can be handled by including the React.js catch library and later using the catch function. The catch function, which is used after adding the catch library, contains the link to the error handler function. And in this error handler function, the errors are sent to the error console, and also the errors are thrown back to continue the execution. So, whenever an error occurs, it will be redirected to the error console of the web. Can you automate porting Angular 1 code to Angular 2? No. Currently there is not any such tool available that ports the Angular 1 code to the Angular 2 code. In the process of porting the Angular 1 code to Angular 2, the side-by-side manual conversion of Angular 1 directives to the Angular 2 components takes place because they are two different frameworks and hence requires different approaches to solve the same problem. Which module is required for every Angular 2 app? App module is required for every Angular 2 app. What is .angularcli.json? Where can I find it? Angularcli.json is used to configure a project in Angular 2. You can find it in the root folder of your Angular 2 project. Is Angular modules and ES modules are the same? No, both are different. What is multicasting in Angular 2? Multicasting in the Angular 2 is the practice of broadcasting to multiple subscribers in a single execution. Multicasting is a type of observable where you reuse the first listener and send values out to each subscriber without registering multiple listeners on the document. What is annotation in Angular 2? Annotations are used to create annotations attribute to store the array and pass the metadata to the constructor of the annotated class. Annotations are hard-coded and are used by the tracer compiler. List major components of Angular 2. Major components of Angular 2 are a TypeScript class, an HTML template, metadata, style sheet, components, modules, services. What is typings in Angular 2? A typing in Angular 2 is used to describe the contract of the libraries that you use. It is used because the multicasting in the Angular 2 is the practice of broadcasting to multiple subscribers. The TypeScript throws an error when it happens, so the typings are used to tell the compiler about the JavaScript libraries that you load. The typings are defined in the type definition files called d.ts files. What are hooks in Angular 2? The lifecycle hooks are provided by the Angularjs to provide visibility into key moments of the Angular lifecycle. Angular component goes through a different process of the lifecycle from creation to destruction. These different stages of the lifecycle are called the lifecycle of a component. Angularjs provides visibility into these different stages component through the lifecycle hooks. There are 8 lifecycle hooks in Angular. ng-on changes, ng-on init, ng-after ang-after content init, ang-after content checked, ang-after view init, ang-after view checked, ng-on destroy. How to chain HTTP calls in Angular 2. Multiple HTTP calls in the Angular 2 can be chained using the merge map operator. Example: import merge map from RxJS operators. This .http.get.customer.json.pipe merge map customer is equal to this .http.get.customer.contract URL. .subscribe race is equal to this .contract is equal to race. This merge operator is used by the Angular version above 4.3. Angular 2 is written in which language? Angular 2 is written in TypeScript programming language. How to intercept 404 errors in Angular 2. The HTTP interceptor service is used to handle the errors specific in Angular 2. The HTTP interceptor service can be created and registered globally at the root module using the Angular providers. Once it is defined at the root module, the HTTP interceptor will intercept all the HTTP requests and the responses. So it makes an ideal place to catch all the common errors and handle them. What are event emitters in Angular 2? The event emitter class in Angular 2 is used to emit custom events synchronously or asynchronously. It has the emit method to emit these custom events. Syntax: class event emitter T extends subject. Constructor is async, boolean is equal to false. Emit value T. Subscribe generator next any error any complete any subscription. What does Angular 2 hashtags in template mean? The hashtags in Angular 2 is a syntax that is used to declare the DOM elements as variables. These templates render as an HTML and hash is used to declare local variables that reference DOM objects in a template. What is use of @viewChild in Angular 2? The @viewChild is a decorator that is used to configure a view query. It can be used to get the first element or the directive matching the selector from the view DOM. The @viewChild also provides an instance of other components or directive in a parent component so the parent component can access the methods of that component or directive. What is use of ng-content directive in Angular 2? The ng_content tag is used as a placeholder to display dynamic content. This placeholder tag is replaced with the original content as the template is parsed. The ng-content creates components that can be configured depending on the needs of the user. What is a decorator in Angular 2? Decorators are functions that are invoked with the prefix @ symbol and immediately succeeded by a class, parameter, method or property. The decorator function is supplied data about the class, parameter or method,
and the decorator function returns something in its place or manipulates its target in some way. Usually, the something a decorator returns is the same thing that was passed in, but it has been augmented in some way. Decorators are designed for a future version of JavaScript, but the Angular team wanted to use them, and they have been included in TypeScript. What is use of .subscribe in Angular 2? .subscribe is a method of RxJS library that Angular uses internally to observe the observable objects. Calling .subscribe method returns a subscription object that has an unsubscribe method, which can be used to stop receiving notifications.